Imagine standing on this massive, totally chaotic construction site. You've got steel beams swinging overhead, concrete being poured by the ton, and just hundreds of workers moving in every direction.
Oh, yeah, just absolute organized chaos.
Right. And for decades, the person running that entire site, the project manager, they basically held a clipboard that was governed by three simple metrics: just time, cost, and quality.
The holy trinity of project management.
Exactly. But today, if you look closely at what they're, actually tracking, those traditional blueprints just aren't enough anymore.
No, not even close.
That project manager is now looking at a ledger that measures carbon output, social equity, and, quite literally global survival, which is wild.
It really is. We are watching this entire profession basically rewrite its own DNA in real time.
Yeah.
It's this massive systemic shift in how the physical and corporate world gets built and organized and managed. The old binary of just being, on time or under budget, it's being replaced by this highly complex ecosystem of environmental accountability.
And that's exactly what we're getting into today. Welcome to the deep dive. This is your shortcut to really understanding this vital transformation into sustainable project management.
And we have some amazing sources to help us wrap our heads around it.
We do. We're extracting insights from a pretty fascinating stack of materials today. First, we're looking at the official GPM, which is Green Project Management, their P5 standard.
Yep, the foundational text.
Right. We also have the Intensive SIM, or Sustainability Integration Model, guide from Think Plus Academy. And to give us some much-needed historical context on why all of this is even happening, we're looking at a pretty fiery book review by an author named David Simon.
Yeah, he really doesn't hold back in that review.
Right.
And collectively, these materials reveal an industry that's basically at a breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
They show us how the field is moving away from the era of corporate greenwashing, like just clapping a green leaf logo on a website or writing some vague mission statement.
Right, the PR spin.
Exactly. And moving toward a future that actually uses hard math, rigorous audits, and strict frameworks to save the planet, but while still remaining profitable.
And I promise you, by the end of this conversation, you are going to understand exactly how that mathematical enforcement actually works.
It's intense, but it makes so much sense once you see the mechanics of it.
Totally. But, to understand how the industry is fixing this massive blind spot, I think we have to look at the outdated system that forced this evolution to happen in the first place.
We have to talk about the iron triangle.
Yes, the iron triangle. In project management, there is this legendary, almost mythical concept: time, cost, and quality, which is sometimes called scope, depending on who you talk to.
Right.
And the old joke in the industry was always, pick two.
Yeah, you want it fast and cheap, it won't be good. You want it good and cheap, it won't be fast.
Exactly. And the iron triangle dates back to, what, the 1960s?
Yeah, the 60s. And its relentless focus was basically the ultimate standard of success for generations of managers. Like, finish the job on time, within budget, and according to the agreed-upon specs.
Right.
If you hit those 3 points, your project was a complete success, regardless of the wake it left behind.
And when an entire global industry optimizes purely for time, cost, and scope, it creates a very specific, almost toxic culture.
Oh, absolutely.
David Simon points this out beautifully in his book review of the GPM reference guide. He argues that the iron triangle birthed this deeply ingrained cheap mentality.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Because project managers were financially incentivized to use the absolute cheapest labor, source the most inexpensive materials, and deploy the fastest, acceptable practices, because the only bottom line that mattered was that dollar amount at the end of the quarter.
Right. And Simon traces the long-term, really devastating implications of that narrow mindset. When you maximize financial profit at the expense of everything else, you end up degrading the physical and social foundation of society.
Yeah, it's just not sustainable.
Because the iron triangle simply did not possess a mathematical mechanism to account for things like clean air or clean water or human health.
Which classical economics just calls externalities, right?
Exactly. Externalities.
Yeah.
It's just a fancy word for saying, well, that's somebody else's problem to solve later.
And our sources, they impartially report on what those externalities actually look like in the real world. And like we said, Simon doesn't pull his punches here.
No, he points directly to macro-level disasters that were driven by micro-level project decisions.
Right, like the Pacific garbage patch.
Yep.
Which, that's the result of thousands of projects choosing cheaper, non-biodegradable packaging over sustainable options just to save fractions of a cent per unit.
It adds up fast. And he also highlights the practice of fracking for oil and how that has literally poisoned local water tables because, the environmental safeguards were just deemed too costly to implement.
He even brings up the perpetual haze of smog that permanently overhangs most metropolitan areas today.
Yeah.
All of these things are the direct result of projects being executed relentlessly without any sustainability metrics holding them back.
Because systemic failures happen when the metrics we use to define success completely ignore the environment in which that success takes place.
Yeah.
For decades, the environment was just treated as this infinite resource pool and an infinite dumping ground.
It's sort of like running a local restaurant where your only operational goals are serving food fast, keeping your ingredient costs dirt cheap, and making it taste good enough that people come back.
Right, hitting that iron triangle: time, cost, quality.
Exactly. You are nailing the iron triangle. But if you are quietly dumping on your used kitchen grease out the back door directly into the town's river just to save money on disposal fees.
Which saves you money in the short term.
Right. But eventually you are going to poison the local water supply. And when you do that, you won't have a town left to sell your food to. The restaurant fails because the environment it relies on has just collapsed under the weight of its own efficiency.
That analogy perfectly captures the ultimate irony facing the industry today, actually. Because the turning point here wasn't necessarily some sudden moral awakening across the corporate world.
No, of course not.
The turning point was operational survival. The projects themselves are now actively failing because of the climate damage they helped create in the first place.
And there is a staggering statistic from the GPM study in our sources that perfectly illustrates this. This blew my mind. They found that in the year 2023, 53% of projects were affected by extreme weather events due to climate change.
Over half of all projects globally.
Wait, and that's a massive, frightening jump from just 38% in the year 2021, right? Just 2 years prior.
Yeah, a huge spike. And just think about the logistical nightmare behind those numbers. You cannot maintain a functioning project management industry if more than half of your endeavors are being delayed, destroyed, or derailed by unexpected floods, wildfires, hurricanes, you name it.
Right. Supply chains are snapping, construction sites are washing away.
Exactly. The environment is no longer this philosophical externality. It is a direct, quantifiable operational risk to the traditional financial bottom line.
So the industry just found itself backed into a corner. I mean, the iron triangle is clearly broken if projects are failing at a 53% clip due to weather. The old way of doing things became literally unsustainable.
Yeah, they had to adapt.
So how did the industry evolve a new framework to survive this?
Well, the evolution really started gaining serious traction back in 1994 when a thinker named John Elkington introduced this concept called the triple bottom line.
Okay.
Elkington looked at the traditional corporate structure and argued that companies needed to measure success across 3 distinct pillars: people, planet, and profit.
Right, which is often referred to as the 3BL. The idea being that you have to measure your social responsibility and your environmental impact right alongside your financial prosperity.
Exactly.
Which sounds like a fantastic leap forward.
Right.
But reading through our sources, it seems like the triple bottom line wasn't quite robust enough for the specific world of project management.
No, it wasn't, because project management is a really unique discipline. It's fundamentally about building new things and the specific methods used to construct them.
Right, it's very tactical.
Yeah, a broad corporate mission statement about planet and people that doesn't actually help a manager figuring out how to pour foundation concrete on a Tuesday.
Yeah, fair point.
And that is where Green Project Management, or GPM, stepped in. They took Elkington's triple bottom line and expanded it into what they call the P5 standard.
Okay, so they took people, planet, and profit, and they added 2 crucial new P's to the equation, which are product and process.
Yes. And the true innovation of the P5 standard is how it deconstructs a project into actionable items. It forces practitioners to evaluate their work through 2 distinct perspectives. You have the product perspective and the process perspective.
Right.
And they look at those using 5 specific focus lenses.
Let's actually break those down because I think this represents the real tactical shift on the ground. So the product perspective looks at the actual thing you are building. Could be a suspension bridge, a new piece of banking software, or, an industrial ice cream factory.
Anything, really.
Right. Under P5, the manager evaluates that product through 2 lenses: lifespan and servicing.
Right.
Then you have the process perspective, which is how you manage the daily work to build that product. And that perspective is evaluated through 3 lenses: efficiency, effectiveness, and fairness.
And those lenses ensure that sustainability isn't just, an afterthought. It is integrated into the structural design and the daily management of the work itself.
Okay, I have to pause and play devil's advocate for a second here, just on behalf of any traditional project managers listening to this.
Sure, go for it.
By its very definition, a project is a temporary endeavor. It has a rigid start date and a strict end date. Once the bridge is constructed or the software goes live, the project manager hands over the keys, dissolves the team, and moves on to the next contract.
That's how it's always worked, yeah.
So why is it the project manager's responsibility to care about the product's lifespan or how it's being serviced 20 or 30 years down the line? Shouldn't that be the operations team's problem?
Honestly, that is the single most common point of resistance when introducing these frameworks. That's a fair question.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the decisions made during that temporary bounded project phase, they permanently lock in the environmental and social impacts for decades to come.
Oh, locked in impact.
Precisely. Like if a project manager signs off on a product design that uses proprietary plastic parts that cannot be easily repaired, recycled, or replaced by the end user later on.
They're literally designing future waste.
Exactly. They are dictating on day one that in 10 years, an entire unit will end up in a landfill rather than being refurbished. The temporary process creates the permanent impact. You just cannot separate them.
That is a profound way to look at it, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
To really solidify how this works in practice, let's actually look at the specific example provided in the GPM text, because I think it helps a lot. Imagine a project team is tasked with building a massive net zero ice cream factory.
It sounds delicious but complicated.
Right. And the team decides they want to make local procurement one of their key sustainability initiatives. So they want to source materials and labor from their immediate community.
Which, on the surface, local procurement sounds like a perfect sustainable choice. It's a great PR win.
Totally. But the P5 standard forces them to actually test that assumption. So let's run it through the product lifespan lens. To maintain a net zero factory over its entire lifespan, it requires a massive amount of clean energy.
Right.
The project team realizes that there are absolutely no local energy suppliers capable of providing the 200 megawatts of renewable power they actually need.
The local grid just can't handle it.
No. And then, if we run that same decision through the product servicing lens, the factory hits another wall. Because a net zero facility requires highly specialized, likely proprietary carbon capture and cooling equipment.
Yep.
And the local labor pool simply hasn't caught up to that technology yet, meaning there are zero local technicians with the expertise to actually support the ongoing maintenance of the factory once it's operational.
So the product itself completely fails the local procurement test right out of the gate.
Right.
And we can also evaluate it from the process perspective. If we look through the effectiveness lens regarding how they actually construct the building, the team uncovers this pretty harsh operational truth.
What's that?
During the construction phase, well before their clean energy infrastructure is finalized, they will be forced to draw dirty power from the conventional local grid just to run their heavy machinery.
Oh, wow. So by forcing the team to systematically look through those lifespan, servicing, and effectiveness lenses, the P5 standard catches these massive blind spots.
It's huge blind spot.
It prevents the project manager from writing a glowing PR release saying, hey, we're buying local concrete, while completely ignoring the fact that their energy matrix and long-term maintenance plans are totally unsustainable.
Exactly. It makes the invisible long-term impacts visible before the first shovel even hits the dirt.
It replaces good intentions with rigorous analysis. And, the sources are clear that this isn't just an exercise in corporate altruism, right? There is hard, quantifiable data proving the return on investment here.
Oh, absolutely.
The GPM research highlights that 95% of project managers who actively utilize the P5 framework realized increased sustainability benefits on their projects.
95%. That's huge.
Yeah, the framework actually does what it promises. And perhaps even more importantly, for anyone looking to build a career in this space, 96% of executives now state they believe project managers are integral to sustainable development.
Because the market is demanding this specific skill set. I mean, if you are leading projects today and you cannot navigate these sustainability frameworks, your leadership team will quickly find someone who can. The expectation has just shifted permanently.
Which brings us to, honestly, the most difficult part of this entire transition. Having a theoretical framework like P5 is fantastic. Looking through conceptual lenses, that's helpful. But theory, without strict mathematical enforcement leads straight back to the corporate greenwashing we're trying to escape.
Right, because anyone can claim they are looking through an effectiveness lens in a PowerPoint presentation.
Exactly. So how do practitioners on the ground actually measure, calculate, and legally prove their sustainability metrics?
And that necessity for proof brings us to the grueling reality of ESG certification.
Which stands for environmental, social, and governance.
Right, and specifically, the intensely demanding SIM journey detailed by Think Plus Academy.
SIM, so that stands for Sustainability Integration Model. And just reading through the outline of this program and the source material is genuinely intimidating.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It is this massive 25 workbook ecosystem. It is explicitly designed to take a professional from a state of simple awareness all the way to absolute audit-ready mastery of the data.
And being audit-ready is really the defining characteristic of this new era.
Yeah.
This is no longer about drafting a pleasant mission statement for the company lobby. It's about engineering a verifiable data trail that can actually withstand hostile legal and financial scrutiny.
And to show you the sheer mathematical rigor involved here, we need to look closely at Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the SIM journey. The text refers to Phase 3 as the engine room.
I love that name.
Yeah.
The engine room is where the physical reality of a project is translated into cold, hard mathematics.
So imagine a practitioner sitting in a muddy site trailer. They have a messy stack of raw physical bills on the desk. They have electricity usage statements from temporary generators, municipal water consumption bills, and a pile of diesel fuel receipts from the bulldozers.
Real-world stuff.
Right. The engine room phase requires the manager to take that messy real-world data and feed it through a standardized conversion gateway. They have to mathematically translate gallons of diesel and kilowatts of electricity into precise, standardized greenhouse gas emissions.
So the practitioner is taking raw utility data and running it through these centralized ESG calculators.
Yeah.
And there's no room for estimates or rounding down or marketing spin.
No.
You are building an error-free chain of evidence from a crumpled diesel receipt all the way up to a live corporate performance dashboard.
It is hardcore carbon accounting, and all of that mathematical heavy lifting in Phase 3 feeds directly into Phase 4, which the SIM guide calls the market interfacing layer.
Which sounds very intense.
It does. This is the moment where the environmental math actually meets corporate law.
Yeah, because the stakes in Phase 4 elevate dramatically. Once a project manager has that verified mathematically sound data, they are required to structure it for formal public disclosure.
And the sources mention structuring this data against strict exchange rules, specifically citing things like the ISSB and the GRI.
Right.
And for those unfamiliar, the ISSB is the International Sustainability Standards Board. They basically set the global baseline standards for reporting so that every company around the world is using the exact same math.
Exactly, comparing apples to apples.
And then the GRI, or Global Reporting Initiative, functions similarly for broader impacts. The text explicitly states the purpose of doing all this rigorous reporting. It is to mitigate greenwashing litigation.
Because the landscape has fundamentally changed.
Oh, yeah.
If a company claims a project is net zero or sustainable, and their project manager cannot produce the engine room data to mathematically prove it against those ISSB standards, that company isn't just facing bad public relations anymore.
No.
They're facing severe investor fraud lawsuits. The data trail literally protects the organization from legal ruin.
Which requires an entirely new breed of professional to generate that data. The days of a manager just needing to know how to read a timeline are completely over.
Long gone.
The sources detail the certification process to become a verified GPMB, which is the basic level certification. To prove that you can actually deploy these measurable standards and navigate the math, you have to pass a brutally rigorous exam.
Yeah, depending on a candidate's prior qualifications, they might be required to sit for an exam consisting of 150 complex multiple-choice questions spread over a grueling 3-hour period.
3 hours, and the text notes that half the exam focuses on traditional project delivery methods, and the other half is purely dedicated to sustainability metrics, frameworks, and calculations.
It's an immense intellectual burden.
It really is, and when you step back and look at the whole picture, the 25 workbooks, the greenhouse gas conversions, the strict public disclosure laws, the 3-hour exams, it makes you wonder, are we watching the birth of an entirely new corporate superpower?
Wait.
Like the person who actually holds the receipts on a company's green promises? Oh, absolutely. The person who controls that verifiable data trail, the one who can mathematically connect a raw utility bill to a legally defensible public disclosure document. They hold immense strategic power within an organization now.
Yeah.
They are no longer just managing a temporary project. They're actively managing the company's long-term legal, financial, and reputational viability in the global market.
So if you are listening to this and wondering why this matters to you, especially if, you have never managed a construction site or run an ESG calculation, the implications touch every part of our lives.
They really do.
Whether you are walking through a store deciding which product to buy, allocating your retirement investments toward a specific company, or just sitting in a Tuesday morning corporate planning meeting, you now know the reality behind the curtain. True sustainability is no longer a marketing slogan.
The market simply will not allow it to be a slogan anymore. The legal and environmental risk are just way too high. True sustainability is an auditable mathematical process. It is being forcibly built into the very life cycle of how things are made, enforced by strict frameworks like P5 and grueling training ecosystems like SIM.
And understanding that this massive shift is happening behind the scenes, it gives you a profound advantage. It changes how you evaluate the authenticity of the businesses, products, and projects interacting with your world every single day.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over. We've seen how modern project management now requires tracking raw utility bills, calculating lifetime environmental impacts decades into the future, and structuring data to legally defend against corporate greenwashing litigation.
Right.
At what point does the traditional title of project manager disappear entirely? Are we simply watching them be replaced by a sustainability auditor who just happens to know how to build a bridge?
That's a fascinating way to look at it. The clipboard hasn't just been updated. The person holding it has an entirely new mandate for the future.
They really do. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. We will see you next time.